I mean, it was a really big struggle at the start. Kan kita memang launchingnya during COVID sih. So that was like pretty intense. It's a good lesson in life, I think. Like, you think you have something, but then we should just definitely not do this. This is a fucking bad idea. That's a very tricky part of the business here in Indonesia for sure. And yeah, they're putting all these new taxes in, and I had such a great like New Year's celebration, and then I got to the office, and then they were like, "Do you know that this is happening?" I was like, "Oh my god, fuck!" So you haven't been drinking, huh? For
7 months. It was one hell of a party, but that changed it all.
Oh wow! So you had one big night.
One big night, and it was like not drinking tomorrow. That tomorrow turned into 7 months. So
I find sometimes the word passion project is a very dangerous thing. Because the thing about a passion project is like you're either gonna hate it or you have to take it seriously. Because a lot of people, they start like a real business with real investment, but they still call it a passion project. I've never ever seen that end well.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, E.S. Lawrence. Next week adalah ulang tahun Makna Talks ke-6. Gue tahu kita baru saja merayakan ulang tahun Makna yang ke-10, tapi minggu depan tanggal 26 marks our 6th anniversary. We don't have anything special unless you guys are interested to buy our merch, karena there will be a special release, so more information on that. But when you talk about parties, you talk about drinks. You know the drink, you don't know the guy. Here's the guy. We have Putu here.
Hey,
Putu, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Terima kasih banyak.
Pasti dong, karena kita tahu minumannya. Dan jarang sekali pemiliknya mau berbicara.
Kenapa enggak?
That's my question. Is there a particular reason?
For what?
For I guess alcohol owners or anything, because I've never known kayak misalnya pemilik perusahaan A gitu that owns a massive beer company. I know you know what I'm talking about. Like the face is never there gitu. But I guess you're always out and about. But
I mean, I like being out and about. I love drinking beer and hanging out. So I guess I'm always out and about.
That's right. And thanks for being here all the way to Jakarta. You're based in Bali, yes?
I'm based in Bali, but I come to Jakarta once a month because we have an office here and we sell beer here and
I think
wine and other drinks.
Of course.
Stuff. Yeah.
I met. So I went. Here's a little background. I went to Batu Karas I think last year. I was surfing. I was there with my brother. It was just me and him, and then our good friend introduced us to someone.
Yeah.
We were surfing together and I asked, "Where do you work?" He said, "Kura Kura." His name was Chris.
Oh.
So I met Chris and then we had a good chat about, Batu Kara surfing, and he was in Jakarta. I took it was his girlfriend, and went out for drinks, and then I said, "You know what? I need to talk to Putu, because I think we known each other here when it was one party. I forgot what it was, but since then, Kura Kura's everywhere.
Yeah, we try our best, man. We try our best, yeah.
How do you feel about it now compared to 5 years ago, I guess?
Oh, we launched like 3.5.
3 years ago.
3.5 years ago. Yeah.
How do you see it now?
I'm pretty happy with how it's going. I mean, it was a really big struggle at the start. Kan kita memang launchingnya during COVID sih. So that was like pretty intense. It was like my second venture as an entrepreneur. My first thing was a festival. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of Gypsyland, but I did that. And then, but that was more of like a passion project. This is like a real project.
Yeah.
But so I prepared for that all throughout 2019, and like we were actually had our launch party planned for March 2020.
Yeah.
And then obviously we all know what happened in March 2020, right? So that was like a pretty intense experience to have like this thing you've been preparing for. I mean, I was full-time preparing for a year, but like while I was in university, I was working on it for a year, like during my studies and that as well. And then to have the whole COVID thing happen is like, whoa. It's a good lesson in life, I think. Like, you think you have something, but then...
Were you planning on turning back?
As in just like stopping?
Yeah.
I think there was no plan, right? I think
What do you mean there was no plan?
there was no plan for COVID, right?
Oh, okay,
I mean,
yeah.
when it happened, I mean, we were all like, okay, what are we gonna do? A lot of like other people that I was working with were like, we should just definitely not do this. This is a fucking bad idea. But I was like, well, we've already built this brewery. We already have all the ingredients. We have a team, and I mean, we were ready.
The brewery was
ready.
there.
It was ready. Yeah. So I was just like, we have to do it.
Were people drinking at home?
I mean, I think, you look at the whole pandemic and you see all these headlines of like alcohol sales are going up, but that's like a very Western thing that was happening in Western countries. I mean, I think Indonesia doesn't really have an at-home drinking culture as much as Western countries do.
Yeah.
And then also in Bali, obviously, a lot of the consumption is driven by tourism anyway. So if you
And
close
they weren't
the
there.
if you close the airport, right, sales are gonna go like, so yeah. So it was pretty intense. And obviously when we launched, we didn't have cans either. So we launched with keg only. So you can imagine like only having kegs when bars are closed.
And restaurants are
It
not
doesn't
there.
really work, right? But we were like, okay, we'll have like a little launch party. And then by that time, I think, so we waited until June. And by June, bars were allowed to be open, but like with half capacity. And like, I think in Bali, there was a lot of people breaking rules and whatever. But we launched anyway. We actually sold these like containers of beer that you could go and like fill them up in a bar and bring them home. Yeah, I don't know. We just really wanted to get out there.
That was a good strategy, though.
I mean,
Did it work? No.
no, God, no, it didn't really work. No, no, it didn't really work. But I think like one thing about launching during COVID was, I think we were one of the only positive things and one of the new exciting things to happen in like an otherwise very depressing time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So I think that actually allowed us to like really capture a lot of attention and really make a lot of people happy,
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
And we did do a lot of events.
Yeah.
I mean, they were small. There weren't a lot of people around, but there was like, that community in Bali that was there, that actually lived there. And it was, they really, really embraced us because like we were like some of the only people like throwing parties at the time. And yeah, people really got around it. And obviously like we were one of the first craft beers, and people really love to have something different, something that tastes really good with a lot of flavor. So yeah. No, it was good. I'm really glad that we did launch, and I'm really glad that we didn't wait till the end, because I mean, that would have been 2.5 years.
What was the current condition of craft beers in Indonesia? I have no idea. I knew some, but I mean, I knew from communities. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There was definitely a few players around already.
Yeah.
And we were, I think, like the third or the second or the third one. But I think, we made like a pretty significant impact in the overall culture. And then since then, there's been other breweries behind us, and it's really good. It's really good to start a new industry.
I think we've had Kura Kuras here for how many years? A few years now. 2 years, I think.
2 years in Jakarta.
2 years. In fact,
2, 3,
in fact, please bring like two beers here.
Are we gonna have a beer?
No, I'm not gonna have it. I've stopped drinking for 7 months.
Right,
I don't know. I want, a little plug-in's nice.
Thank you.
But
Terima
I,
kasih.
as if you need more, but no. But I think
Always need more, man. Always need more.
so. But let's go back a bit. You were born in Bali, or
So I was actually born in Australia.
Okay.
But I mean, so my mom, when she was like 7 months pregnant, went to Australia, had me, and then a month after I was born, flew back. So technically I was born in Australia, but I mean, I was raised in Bali. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
like
your father's...
My parents were living in Bali, and my dad's fully Balinese.
Yeah.
So yeah, I grew up in Bali, inside of the Bounty Hotel. I don't know if anyone knows
No.
what that is. Yeah.
The fuck?
Yeah. So my dad started that hotel. So I actually grew up in like a shitty room at the back of that hotel. Yeah.
boy, I wouldn't call it shitty back then.
I mean,
Would you?
the Bounty Hotel was pretty
Yeah, it was
interesting
it was an
place.
interesting
Like
place.
I remember growing up there when I was 4 years old. I was just like walking around,
You shouldn't be
and I
seeing
got
things.
like shot by a BB gun by some random tourist. And there was like BB gun wars, people drunk all the time. I don't know. It's a very colorful place back in the day.
Yeah, you shouldn't be seeing.
But that
things.
was like Kuta back in the day, man. Oof,
Yeah,
wild.
and
Wild.
I
You think Canggu is crazy, man? That's nothing, man.
talk about
That's
that area.
nothing. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know this. So it was wild, and you shouldn't be seeing things that age.
Yeah, man. I mean, maybe that's why I am the way I am.
What was it like though? I mean, I know you got crazy stories, but growing up in that particular area, I mean, business is business. You know what I mean? And it's part of how you're gonna grow up. Were you alone? Did you have siblings? What was it
Yeah,
like?
I have a little sister.
Who's
but
also doing a project.
Yeah, she's helping me with our most recent project,
That's
which
right.
I'm really happy about. We just launched Santai Seltzer last Friday, which
Wow.
I'm super excited about that. I have big hopes for that category. I think it'll be really interesting. But yeah, no, growing up, so I moved to Batu Belig when I was like 6,
Okay.
which was like at the time like way more chill.
Rice fields. And
But just like growing up in Bali at that time in like the 90s, early 2000s, this is totally different. Like totally different way of living, you know, like like the English speaking community was like a lot smaller back then, like super small. Now it's
everywhere,
massive.
yeah.
And like there wasn't really a lot of like rules back then. And you could really do anything you wanted. And there was no traffic as well. I think that's probably, if I'm going to be honest, that's probably the biggest thing that's changed about Bali. Like
Traffic.
100%. That's the one.
Totally agree.
Like that's the one massive change that I see. I mean, there's obviously heaps of massive changes.
Yeah.
But that's the one that like sucks the most.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I went to school in Diatmika in Sanur.
Yeah.
It used to take me like 20 minutes.
Now.
Now it would take you like 2 hours,
2
to
hours.
get there.
I
It's
agree.
like insane. Yeah.
So a little background. My dad is. I mean, I've been with him since I was a kid. So my dad's actually from the UK.
Okay.
Well, he's no longer around. Rest in peace. But he was here for 30 years. The reason why I'm telling you this is because until the day he died, he would never feel as if he was a local. And that went down to my brother, who's mixed.
Okay.
Which I'm thinking it's you. Till today, he would feel, hey, I'm a little bit too white in Jakarta, and I'm a little bit too Asian in the UK.
Yeah.
And that sometimes bothers him because it makes me feel like I can't do things that I'm supposed to be doing or whatever it is. Was that a part of you growing up, or?
You know, obviously, like, I've heard that narrative before about like mixed race people, and that's obviously fair enough. Like, I understand that perspective. My personal story with that is I always saw it as a massive advantage.
Cool.
Like, I always saw it as a massive positive thing. Like, growing up in Bali, you know, it's really funny. Like, when I can speak Indo, people are like, they think it's hilarious. You know?
What do you say?
And like,
Saya udah di sini 30 tahun gitu.
yeah, jangan pernah Bali. Yeah. But yeah, so, you know, I never actually struggled with that.
Yeah.
Even when I moved to Australia, I think, at the beginning, like being called Putu, like they thought that was really funny. But like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, I just kind of used it as like an icebreaker and like made a joke about it, and it was fine. I don't know. I never had like
That kind of
an issue with being mixed race. I always thought it was like an advantage.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about Australia, that inspired you with craft beers.
Yeah.
Why Australia in particular?
Well, so yeah, I grew up in Bali up to the age of 14.
Okay.
And then when I was 14, I went to boarding school in Australia.
Cool.
And, you know, I think when you grow up in Bali, one thing about growing up in Bali is you do grow up quite fast. Just in terms of like your exposure to things.
Especially
like,
a bounty.
Like, yeah. Yeah, I mean, having a dad in the nightlife industry,
Yeah.
and I mean, that really wasn't even it. Like, just growing up in Bali and going to international school, like,
Yeah.
you start partying like real young, you know,
Agree.
and you start drinking when you're like,
10.
honestly, yeah,
Yeah.
really. So, like, by the time I went to Australia, like, I was already drinking beers and all that kind of thing. So, you know, I had like a fake ID already. I came prepared, man. I came prepared. I was like, I know that there's a drinking age where
Yeah.
I'm going. So you just go to kantor polisi, Pak bisa ini di. Anyway, and then you go, you know, I had a fake ID when I was in Australia. And yeah, I started drinking beer there. And you know, if you fast forward, so when I first moved in Australia it was 2008, and they only really had like the big brands, you know, Carlton Draft, VB,
Yeah.
Tui's, and all these kinds of brands that I don't know if you know, but it's like the big commercial ones. And by the end of my time in Australia in 2019, almost 11 years later, like if you go to like a cool restaurant in the city, you'd only really find craft beer, you know, and they
That's
would be
right.
like more and more hyper local.
Yeah.
And yeah, people.
And there's more story to it.
There's more story. There's more flavor. It's better quality. There's more variety.
Yeah.
It's more interesting. So yeah, I think you know it really exploded in Australia, and it continues to grow in Australia. And yeah, I really fell in love with craft beer. You know, when I was in university, I lived down the road from a brewery called Stomping Ground, and I would go there all the time. And I made friends with a lot of the bartenders, and you know, growing up, I've always been like a massive, massive foodie. So I always like to try like different food, and like when I travel, I always have like my list of places that I'm going to and that kind of thing. So obviously, like when you discover something like craft beer, having that curious mentality, you know, you always wanted to try different styles, and yeah, it really just like it was just a fit for me. You know, I really, really liked it. And then, yeah, I made friends with a lot of the staff there and got to know a lot about it. And then, you know, when I would go home for the holidays, I mean, I was going up and down like 5 times a year from Melbourne to Bali. And I was just get so bored of just drinking the same shit that they have here, you know? So, like, I was like, yeah, I want to make...
That's the only option, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there was a few options, but in my opinion, they all kind of tasted pretty similar. So yeah, I was like, maybe there's like something that I can do here. So I thought about it, and then I kept thinking about it, and I was like, I think this makes sense. And I think in like my second last year of uni, I was like, all right, I might
Take this
try
seriously.
to start a brewery. Yeah. So yeah, while I was in university, I started doing a lot of research. I emailed a lot of like the breweries around my area. And I was like really surprised by like how receptive everyone was. I was just like, hey, you know, I'm from Indonesia. I'm studying here. I'm thinking of going back home and starting a brewery. There aren't many craft breweries in Indonesia. And yeah, I'd like to, you know, have a beer with you and pick your brain and like ask you about how you started your business. Just emailing all the breweries.
What was the response?
I think out of 10, I think like 5 of them met with me.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, of the Stomping Ground guys were like the best because I think like
You were there all the time.
I went there a lot. Yeah, and then I was like, oh, so like, where do you get your equipment from? Like, da da da. They just like told me.
They opened everything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I live in a different country, right? And like at that time, there was already like heaps of craft breweries.
Yeah.
So there's not really any like secret or anything like that. And also, I was like 21. So they were like, it's just a 21-year-old kid.
The fuck
like,
is this kid doing?
Yeah. So they weren't like threatened or anything.
Yeah.
So
Now they are.
No.
Well, now it's all it's down there.
We just sent our container to Australia like 4 weeks ago. Yeah.
Congratulations,
It
dude.
should be hitting the shelves.
Wow.
At the end of next month or the
We
start of next month.
cannot call it a craft beer anymore.
Yeah, you can.
No, it's not.
Why not?
It's-
You can
it's not a craft
It
beer.
is
It's
100% a craft beer.
You still call it a craft beer?
100%. Yeah. I mean,
It's in
made with-
Australia.
Yeah, but you have craft beer from America here, right?
I know. Yeah. So anyway, so that happened. What was convincing like?
Sorry?
What was convincing like? You convinced your father to do it, or wasn't there a lot of convincing?
I think like so like luckily my family already like was in the alcohol business. So they had a import wine and distribution business, and they also produce wine
Wow.
here in Indonesia. So I was like, well, we have the license already, and that's a very tricky part
obviously.
of the business here in Indonesia for sure. Hopefully one day they kind of open
Ease
it up
that
a
out.
little bit, yeah. And yeah, they're putting all these new taxes in, and yeah, it's really like
Yeah, we can go on about it.
man, like
fuck you.
I had such a great like New Year's celebration, and then I got to the
Nah.
office, and then they were like, "Do you know that this is happening?" I was like, "Oh my god, fuck."
Was it a pain?
Sorry.
Was it a pain in the beginning or I mean, regulations is always a pain.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the beginning,
It was like really difficult, like because we
Even-
had, we
even
had,
if
like
you
a
had-
wine license, but then we had to like make beer.
Okay.
I don't know. It was
so
a
even if
whole-
you had license, it was still a pain for you.
I mean, it's always a continuous pain, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people love to complain about the government here, but honestly, the government everywhere in the world. Like my friends in Australia always complain about the government.
Yeah.
You know, my friends in America.
But if you talk about taxes, it's not 40-70%, is it, out there?
I mean, that's this whole 40% nightlife tax thing. That's a whole other thing that's crazy. But no, like the taxes in Indonesia are actually lower than in Australia for alcohol.
Of course,
yeah.
if you count them by, I guess, rupiah.
Yeah.
But you're not selling them can by can, are you?
What
I
do you
mean,
mean?
you're selling them in big amounts, and they would cost a lot. I mean,
Yeah. No, but like the tax per liter in Australia of alcohol is still way more than Indonesia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank
Yeah.
God you made it here.
But like obviously if you compare like the average GDP per capita
but-
and all that kind of stuff, yeah, it
Kind of doesn't
yeah,
make sense, does it?
anyway, I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? I'm
Yeah.
not gonna even.
That's for another podcast.
yeah, that's for another.
So anyway, they're already in the business. You got the license, so you come up to them and said, "Hey, I was inspired by."
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of showed them the numbers of like how the industry evolved in the U.S. because the U.S. is kind of where all of this
course, yeah.
started, and then Australia. I think in the U.S. in like the '80s, it kind of slowly started, and then in Australia, I think roundabout when I moved to Australia in 2008, like Little Creatures had just kind of started to like hit its stride. I did see Little Creatures around at the beginning, but then I mean, obviously now they're
Never.
huge. It's a huge brand. It's been acquired, but it's a very big brand now.
Yeah.
It's a global brand now. So yeah. I showed them what happened in the US, and then I showed them what happened in Australia, and then obviously
Was this like a proper pitch of, "Hey, Dad, sit down. I got a
no.
computer."
It wasn't a proper
it was,
pitch, no.
It was two boys with a beer, or what
No,
was it like?
it was just I think I sent him like some articles. yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
You don't come up to someone and say, "Hey, I'll send you a bit of proof, and can I have some cash and make my own beer?"
I guess.
Basically.
I guess.
But how is it working with family though? I can never think about it.
Oh, really?
Thinking about it makes me go crazy.
Oh,
Man.
really?
Doesn't it?
I guess I'm like pretty lucky. Well, I mean, like touch wood, right? Because
Yeah.
nothing goes wrong. But so far, I mean, my dad's a very chill guy, and he's kind of like let me run,
Yeah.
especially on like the product development, marketing, and sales side. He lets me do all of that myself. Obviously, there is a team there supporting me.
Yeah,
I
of
could
course.
never do that without the amazing team that I have. And yeah, it's honestly not as bad as you'd think. But again,
No.
everyone's situation is different.
course,
yeah.
And I think it's the connections that you have. It's the people that support you, and then picking the right people and everything. I mean, it's not as if like it's magic and it just becomes one great beer. You know?
No. It takes a long time, a lot of R&D,
course, yeah.
a lot of trial and error. I mean, we still continually trying to always improve
course,
and
yeah.
make sure our consistency is good, our quality is good. Always making sure our ingredients are consistent. Because they do change
course,
sometimes.
yeah.
Like with the war in Ukraine, like
Yeah.
certain things change with like the wheat and the malt market. So the barley market. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like a constant thing. I think people, when they go to like a supermarket or a restaurant and they have like the same product again and again, I think people don't realize how much work goes into keeping that consistent. It's like
Yeah.
a lot of people running around,
Yeah.
making sure that tastes the same, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
I think people really take that for granted. And that's one thing I learned, you know, because I'd never, you know, made a packaged product before, and I didn't realize, like, oh my God, how much effort it actually takes
Yeah.
to keep that consistent.
And I think
it's
the
a
island,
lot.
correct me, the Island Ale, right? The Island Ale, once you drink it, you know this is the Island Ale.
Yeah.
And you know this reminds me of Bali. Or
Yeah.
this reminds me of an island in particular
Yeah.
that was really beautiful memory, you know?
Yeah.
And I guess it worked out really well. But,
Yeah.
but then the trouble is you keep that same consistency for the next few years, right?
Yeah.
But who gets to say, yep, this is it. This is the taste that I want.
Well, we have like parameters, like so you can measure a lot of the different parameters, and then obviously we have like our brewers that
Yeah.
like taste every batch to make sure, you know, it's the same.
What a life.
Yeah. It's a tough life. It's a tough life up there at the brewery.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, back to working
Yeah.
with family. I think it definitely can be difficult sometimes. I just think like you have to like let it out, you know? Like sometimes we have arguments. We just have to have the argument, you know? And sometimes we like scream at each other. But then 5 minutes later we're just joking around again, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's bad if you like don't let it out, you know?
I agree.
And then that's when it can like fester.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it becomes problematic.
Yeah.
But then obviously like you have I have some friends also that like work with family, and like it's very difficult for them because I guess the older generation like doesn't give them like any trust. And that I can see as being very frustrating. Whereas I don't really have that problem. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
When did you know this was a big deal?
What do you mean?
When did you know that, wow, Kura Kura's out there?
It's not even a big deal yet, man. We still have to make it a bigger deal, I think.
So what's the dream then?
I mean, I think I'm really happy with our trajectory right now at home here in Indonesia. I think Indonesia is always going to be our main focus. I mean, export is nice, but I really want to really help grow the craft beer scene here and continue to like educate the market on what craft beer is, mainly here in Indonesia. I mean, I think it's a bigger opportunity. I mean, in Australia, you have like over 1,000 craft beer brands. And I don't even know how many different beers, like how many different SKUs. And yeah, we'll be sending another container to Hong Kong next week. So
I'll be in Hong Kong next week.
Oh yeah.
Is it going to arrive there?
No, I don't think it has to be in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Stamps and paperwork and, you know.
Congratulations,
The Communist
dude.
Party has to sign off on it.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know. But yeah, that'll be really exciting as well. But yeah, I think definitely.
You still wouldn't call it a big deal.
Sorry?
You still won't call it a big deal.
I mean, it is what it is. I'm happy with where it is now,
Yeah.
but I'm you know, I feel like you don't want to get complacent, right?
Of course,
you
yeah.
wanna
But do you
keep-
remember the moment when somebody's drinking it? Like, you don't know who
Yeah.
they are. But he's having a Kura Kura.
Yeah.
And you're out there looking at him drinking it.
Yeah.
Was there a particular moment that got you saying to yourself, wow,
I can't
That
remember
feels good.
like a specific moment, but yeah, I think it feels good. It still feels really good when I see that and when I hear that from people that like don't know that like I own the brand, and they say that it's nice.
wow.
It's a good feeling.
Well, I
But
think,
like and we still want to like launch new beers and
course.
make different types of beverages. You know, I really like one of the main reasons why I like started this. Obviously, there was the craft beer specific reasons, but on a broader sort of idea, like I really want to change the narrative and change the perception of locally made products, and particularly
Understand.
locally made beverages.
Yeah.
Because I think there is like a stigma around like especially locally made alcohol that, you know, you either have like these really expensive legacy international brands like Hennessy and like whatever like that, or you have like
Locals that get you fucked up. And,
local brands that maybe aren't like the highest quality but are like more about the price point. And I really think that for the longest time there weren't many
Introduction to
there
it.
weren't many companies like trying to create exclusive, high quality local brands. Like that wasn't. It's not that they were like trying to do that
Because
and
there's no
failing.
market. There's
It
no
was
market
like
for it, was it?
It was like, oh, let's not. Yeah. Well, they didn't think there was. And to be honest, there may be like for the bigger companies, it probably isn't worth for them to go into the segment that I wanted to go into. But I think like with this and with other people now coming in, like there's some really good local gins now, and like there's that Karu Soju brand that I think is really interesting. There are these like smaller artisan producers that are, they're really starting to create this narrative that, it can be locally produced and it can still be really good. And I think like more and more like the younger generation of Indonesia, the growing middle class that everybody likes to talk about, like these people, I think, they're lebih bangga jadi orang Indonesia, like there is like, for example, like if you look at like my dad's generation, right, the older people,
I want to go out there to America.
They definitely have that like they Western, look up to the West. The West is best, and especially when it comes to consuming like beverages, like alcohol, like they're always gonna think that the imported stuff is better, you know. But I think like the younger generation, I think people are gonna be proud to consume a local product, but it has to be good, It has
quality
to.
Speaks.
The liquid actually has to be good, and I really think. I mean, you're seeing that now. I just read an article about like the whiskey industry in India. So
what is that like?
So India is actually the biggest brown spirit market in the world. And previously, they had that same dilemma that I was referring to earlier. They had like the cheap local stuff, which is not like real whiskey. It's like,
but it's gonna get you fucked
like
up.
grain, like neutral grain alcohol, with coloring and some other bullshit in there, and they call it whiskey.
Oh, it's not real whiskey then?
No,
right?
no.
Okay.
It's like it's just basically a vodka base with flavors and whatever. Or you
water
have
from
like
the river.
Yeah. The Ganges.
The Ganges.
Yeah. That's why it's brown. And then you would have like obviously the imported stuff from Japan and mainly Scotland because it's they look up to the UK and stuff. And you had that like gap in between. And now there is a massive boom in like locally produced whiskey in India that's actually produced properly. Wow. So they're using, proper like grain, proper malt, and they're actually aging it. And like, cause India is quite a big country. They have a lot of different like climates. So they found like the right place that you can age whiskey. And that's booming now. That industry is booming now.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think like,
that's exactly what
I think Indonesia is going to follow a similar trend like that. And I think like people in India, again, they're actually proud to consume local,
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Well, then they also have a super nationalist president, but that's like a whole other thing. But yeah, anyway, so I think like that kind of like proudly
mindset
local is it's only gonna grow, And I think you have that with like other brands like in Bali, not just in the beverage category, like a lot of like hospitality brands that are coming out of Bali now that are really cool. A lot of fashion brands that are coming out of Indonesia now that are like really cool. So I think like it's only gonna happen more and more. And like we definitely want to be a part of that.
What's the most important thing to you when you talk about, I guess, growing Kura Kura as a local brand and sharing this to other people? Because I know you do plenty of talks about this as well, and the importance of it. Because there's obviously community impact. So people talk about it. There's always sustainability, culture. There's always quality. What you're making, it's better than the ones out there we're importing, and also maybe things like global appeal. What are the most important things to you?
I mean, I think like being Indonesian but with like a contemporary voice is important. I think like what I really like to do is like give a platform for people that are already doing like cool stuff and maybe give them the ability to do a project that they maybe didn't have the budget to do before and like help them do something really cool.
And you're not even talking about beers, right? Like,
No, but I think like the beer is a vehicle to help like other people like tell their story.
That's
and
right.
It also helps us build our brand,
Yeah.
obviously. But I think like I really try to focus on like people from Indonesia doing cool
Yeah.
things, traditional things, but also like contemporary
I agree.
things as well.
That-
Like we have this series called Island Artisans,
Yeah.
and we like try to find people in Bali, just doing really cool stuff. There was this guy that he's like a seventh generation blacksmith. And yeah, he's like a photographer, but then during COVID, there was no photography work. And then, yeah, he like started his own knife brand. It's called Sound Familiar Knives. It's really, really cool. And so he's using like the old Balinese technique mixed with like the Japanese, more modern knife making, blacksmithing or whatever technique. Just like interesting things like that, and obviously a lot of like painters and other artists. We really like to give them a platform to reach more people, and that's also something that we want our brand to be associated with, because it is like it's a craft, it's an artisan product
For
in
now.
itself. Sorry?
For now.
It's gonna be craft, man. Forever.
Well, Kura Kura has always been, in my opinion, drinks for the cool kids, beer for
Right.
the cool kids.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if that was a thing that you made.
Yeah.
But it seems to be working.
Yeah.
Do you feel it's important to keep the market that way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it depends what you mean by like cool kids, right? We don't want to be like, oh, you can't sit with us. Like I don't know, like we don't want to be like too cool.
Is there that factor?
No,
Not that I know.
I
Okay.
don't think so. No. I think like I think by like working with and sponsoring and giving a platform to the people that we do, it has that allure to it. But yeah, I think for me the most important thing at the end of the day is the liquid, and keeping it consistent and tasting good, and
I do know for a fact that I think alcohol consumption, one big portion is actually the working class, and that's where the money is.
That's where the volume is.
That's
right?
where the volume is.
100%.
Do you feel like that's one way for you to, you want to touch that market, or
To grow, I think it's more like the middle class is gonna grow, right?
And
so
you
I'm
trust that?
kind of waiting for that. I don't know how long that's gonna take. But no, I mean, I think with Kura Kura, like I don't necessarily want to like cheapen the brand or make a cheaper product or anything like that. I'm definitely thinking of starting other brands that like I just launched a seltzer, like I just said.
Of course.
And that is definitely something that I'm aiming to be like, it's cool, but it is definitely at a price point that's a lot more accessible to a lot of people. Yeah.
So
also with the seltzer, it doesn't have to be shipped cold. So our beer, it's not pasteurized. It doesn't have any preservatives or anything in it. So basically it has to be shipped and stored cold all the time.
You've got one traveling to Hong Kong cold?
So the one in Hong Kong, it's cold. Yeah.
And it's going to be in that container for at least weeks, no?
It's like, I think it's like a week.
A week.
Yeah. Wow. It's like a reefer container.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quality right there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the seltzer.
Yeah.
It's, I guess, your new baby, or it's your sister's.
So my sister and I like worked on it together.
What was the conversation like? Was it like, hey, you inspired me, or
I think like
is there none of that?
No, we talk a lot. So my sister lives in the UK and she works in the UK actually. Wow. She works for like a marketing agency there that specializes in FMCG. So she's always like, she's pretty clued in on like trends and stuff. So we're always talking about like beverage trends and what would be the thing to start next that makes the most sense. And then, as you might know, like the seltzer category in 2019, it started to really pick up steam. And then all throughout COVID up until 2021, it just like went ballistic in the US. It didn't really...
Why is this?
I mean, who knows, man?
People got bored of beers or ciders?
I think the alcohol industry is like very cyclical. It's very trend based.
Got it.
With
Gotcha.
in some
Which
sections.
is not here.
But like there are like a lot of beverages that
Yeah.
are just there,
Yeah.
that aren't up and down. But yeah, the seltzer thing, it definitely like really took off amongst college students, and then that like got into the wider community, I guess, of like people that are more health conscious, people that
Yeah.
are like sick of just drinking beer, they want something else sometimes. But yeah, it just really took off. I think the health conscious thing was one of the things that really
Yeah.
led that. And then yeah, it didn't really work in Europe. I think people in Europe are like a lot more like stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
They like doing things a certain way, and
Yeah.
that's the way they do it.
I'll have this, and this is for the rest of my life. That's usually yeah.
But yeah, in Australia, it took 2 years later, but yeah, now it's really taking off in Australia. It's very, very consistent in Australia, and it's like in the U.S. the growth isn't really there anymore, but it isn't really going downhill. It's really
Gotcha.
it's taken a portion of the market, and it seems to be consistently
Yeah.
there.
So that was the aim.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that happen in the U.S. and seeing it happen in Australia, I think obviously there's so many Aussie tourists going to Bali, and I think in Thailand and a few other countries in Southeast Asia, they've launched seltzers, and there are already a few seltzers here in the market.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're really excited about
Wow.
that one.
3 flavors.
3 flavors, yeah. So
One can has 2 flavors. Correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah,
Say-
so we have a lemon lime, we
Yeah.
have a apple ginger acai, and we have my favorite, which is the passion fruit guava.
and guava. Yeah, I saw
Yeah,
that.
it's good. It's tasty.
I know.
Yeah.
I'd love to give it a try. When
Yeah, yeah,
when
yeah.
I s-
I'll
when I
send you
change
some.
when I change my mind and start drinking again, I'll give you a ring.
Yeah. So you haven't been drinking, for
Yeah, 7 months. It was one hell of a party, but that changed it all. I mean, so that's a
Right.
different story.
Oh
but,
wow! So
but
you
that
had one big night. and
One
you're
big
like,
night, and
No,
then that was
I can't do this anymore.
one big night, and it was like not drinking tomorrow.
Yeah.
That tomorrow turned into 7
Yeah.
months. So.
Yeah. Fair enough.
but anyway, so
Moderation. It's all about moderation.
so the seltzer's here. Well, it's not here. It's in Bali.
Yeah.
Was starting it much more easier that you started Kura Kura?
I mean,
And it's called Santai, by the
Yeah,
way.
it's
Very,
called
very
Santai
cool.
seltzer.
Very, very
so
cool.
It's a good
Wow.
one. I should have bought a can, but anyway.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was gonna be easier.
Okay.
But yeah, I really underestimated how different it actually is. Because with beer, you're going and you're recreating an age-old process that's been around for a long time. With seltzers and like other RTDs, like pre-mixed kind of drinks, it's like you're really kind of doing a totally different thing, and I think really underestimated how different the expertise that you need is to make something like this. So we tried it first with just our like brewing team, and like to be honest, like
You have a wonderful team. They're very smart, no?
yeah, 100%. But they're brewers,
Got it.
And I think brewers, they don't really like seltzer, to be honest. They see
this
it
is
as this
beer.
like this kind of weird thing, and
Lady
it's-
drink.
yeah, whatever you
whatever
want
it
to
is.
call it. I don't know. So yeah, we had to use like external consultants to help us like develop the recipe and everything. And then yeah, there was a few of them that we worked with that we weren't like super happy with, so we had to change, and then we actually had to get quite a bit of new equipment, and
Wow.
yeah, it was a challenge. But yeah, I'm really hopeful for it. But it's good. I mean, like what we do as a company is we want everything to be like top quality for whatever
That's
category
what-
it is.
what
So
you
like
told me,
with Santai, like
explained.
we actually use like real fruit. We're not using like synthetic extracts, and like with the extract flavors that we do use, they're all like natural.
Yeah.
From like the best suppliers that you can find. So yeah, it tastes pretty good compared to the other sort of mixed drinks out there in the market.
Well, the
So,
hassle you just told me, explained how crazy you are for quality.
Yeah.
And again, that's I think one very big reason of why we should shop local.
yeah,
You know, and I think that factor itself shows how passionate you are in this industry.
yeah,
It's I guess when you talk about alcohol or I guess the nightlife industry, it 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 breaks you to a certain point of, hey, when is it going to be serious or when is it going to be all fun and partying and everything? How do you find that?
I mean, I think like
How do you find that
it's
line?
pretty serious all the time. I think. I
Okay.
mean, like when I have fun, I have fun, but that's not work. I think
Got it.
like when I'm working, I'm like pretty. It's a job. It is a job at the end of the day, but
Is it a hobby though?
I think it started off as like a hobby, but then like
Just like any serious
I think
stuff.
like anything serious, you have to take it seriously, right? Like you
Gotcha.
can't. I think I find sometimes the word passion project is a very dangerous thing, because the thing about a passion project is like at some point you're either gonna hate it or
Yeah.
you have to take it seriously, because I don't know, like if it gets to a certain size, it can't.
No,
You
you
know,
can't
I mean, I'm
handle
not
it
talking
anymore.
about like if you just like like want to make a chair in your basement. Like I'm not talking about that. Like
Yeah.
because a lot of people they start like a real business with real investment, but they still call it a passion project. I've never ever seen that end well. Especially when it's like 5 guys get together
Yeah.
and they want to make a
Talk
passion
about
project,
millions and everything.
and they're just like, oh, it'll be fun. I'm like, dude, it's not gonna be fun. I promise you, that's not gonna be fun. That's like my number one. Anytime I see anyone about to embark on that kind of journey, I'm like, don't do it, dude.
So let's close it with that.
Anyway.
Let's close it with advices coming from you. I mean, Kura Kura is doing a good job.
Yeah.
It's out in Australia pretty soon. Is it out? No, it's
No, it
next
should be
week.
like mid to end of Feb.
Cool.
Yeah.
February is going to be out, and then you said March, something like that. It's going to be in
I think Hong Kong at the same time.
Hong Kong, same
Yeah,
time.
around like the start of next month. Because Hong Kong, the distributor that we're using there is just like gonna do it straight away. Whereas in Australia, we're with like a much larger
Okay.
company and they have a longer process. And yeah,
Cool. And then it's in Jakarta. It's also in Bali.
Bali, Jakarta, Lombok,
Yeah.
Medan, Bandung, Surabaya. Yeah, the main cities in Indo.
So what's one particular, or maybe a few advices that you can say? Hey, here's how you start your own, I guess, alcohol company or beer. Start your own beer. This is how to do it. Because I've seen beer brands that started off as a craft beer. I've
Yeah.
never heard them again.
Yeah. I think like the main thing I would say is like it's like you definitely have to be passionate about it. You definitely have to love it, but you definitely have to understand that it is like a full-time job.
Got it.
Yeah. And it's not like just this like fun thing. I mean, like for me, like I really, really still enjoy running the business, and I enjoyed probably even more starting it because it's like super fun and exciting. But always in the back of my mind, I was like, this is like, I'm going to be doing this for like the rest of my life, and I'm okay with it. Like I'm excited for it, and it's like a real commitment, you know? But with any business, I think, but that's not to say like a lot of people just stumble into things, but I think like at some point you have to like switch and start taking it seriously if you want it to get to that next level.
That's
you know?
right. And I guess again, it's keeping up with all the regulations and all the paperworks. And it's a whole different thing. I think.
Yeah.
Starting off a beer company and say a podcast, it's
Yeah.
not apple to apple, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's way more difficult to start off beer with all those regulations and shit going around. But and also huge funding.
Sorry.
Huge funding. That's also important, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the moment, like, we can fund our own growth at the moment.
Wow.
But yeah, at the beginning, there was a lot of investment that was like needed for sure. I mean, beer is like a pretty capital intensive business. And obviously because we built a factory, we didn't outsource our production. Because a lot of like new FMCG startups usually will outsource their production.
Yeah.
And it
Which
makes
is- which-
sense,
yeah,
right? It
just a
makes
strategy.
Total sense. Yeah, it makes total sense. But I mean, we didn't really have that option. I mean, like none of the
Where did you
other-
can run to?
well, nowhere really. Like none of the other producers here would make beer for us, and like we really wanted to do it ourselves to make a product that tasted the way that we wanted it to taste, you know,
Yeah.
so we could take complete ownership over the quality and that kind of thing.
Amazing. Well, Putu, thanks for being here, man.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I can't wait to try the seltzer, and good luck with everything. I guess it tells us how passionate you are for local brands, and
Yeah.
also I guess it's way more than just beers. It's way more than just that.
It's just the beginning, I think.
It's the beginning.
Yeah. We have a lot of different other alcohols that we wanna make.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here. Anything else you want to add?
No, that sounds good.
Cool.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me, and
Of course. Kalau gitu, say yes, Lawrence,
saya Putu.
and I'll see you guys next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.